We'll start with Surah Al-Mulk and go up till, this is one of the slightly longer juz'. We'll go up till the beginning of Surah Jinn. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبا فستعلمون كيف نذير ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبض ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم من أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور أفمن يمشي مكبا على وجهه أهدى أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم قل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة
قليلا ما تشكرون قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم من أهلني الله ومعي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نون والقلم وما يسطرون ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون وإن لك لأجرا غير ممنون وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم فستبصر ويبصرون بأيكم المفتون إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين فلا تطع المكذبين ودوا لو تدهن فيدهنون ولا تطع كل حلاف مهين هماز مشاء بنميم مناع للخير معتد أثيم عتل بعد ذلك زنيم أن كان ذا مال وبنين إذا يتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين سنسمه على الخرطوم إنا بلوناهم كما بلونا أصحاب الجنة إذ أقسموا ليسرمنها مصبحين ولا يستثنون فطاف عليها طائف من ربك وهم نائمون فأصبحت كالصريم فتنادوا مصبحين أن اغدوا على حرثكم إن كنتم صارمين فانطلقوا وهم يتخافتون ألا يدخلنها اليوم عليكم مسكين وغدوا على حرد قادرين فلما رأوها قالوا إنا ضالون بل نحن محرومون قال أوسطهم ألم أقل لكم لولا تسبحون قالوا سبحان ربنا إنا كنا ظالمين فأقبل بعضهم على بعض يتلاومون قالوا يا ويلنا إنا كنا طاغين عسى ربنا أن يبدلنا خيرا منها إنا إلى ربنا راغبون كذلك العذاب والعذاب الآخرة أكبر لو كانوا يعلمون إن للمتقين عند ربهم جنات النعيم أفنجعل المسلمين كالمجرمين ما لكم كيف تحكمون أم لكم كتاب فيه تدرسون إن لكم فيه لما تخيرون أم لكم أيمان علينا بالغة إلى يوم القيامة إن لكم لما تحكمون سلهم أيهم بذلك زعيم أم لهم شركاء فليأتوا بشركائهم إن كانوا صادقين يوم يكشف عن ساق ويدعون إلى السجود فلا يستطيعون خاشعة أبصارهم وترهقهم ذلة وقد كانوا يدعون إلى السجود وهم سالمون فذرني ومن يكذب بهذا الحديث سنستدرجهم من حيث لا يعلمون وأملي لهم إن كيدي متين أم تسألهم أجرا فهم من مغرم مثقلون أم عندهم الغيب فهم يكتبون فاصبر لحكم ربك ولا تكن كصاحب الحوت إذ نادى وهو مكذوب لولا أن تداركه نعمة من ربه لنبذ بالعراء وهو مذموم فاجتباه ربه فجعله من الصالحين وإن يكاد الذين كفروا ليزلقونك بأبصارهم لما سمعوا الذكر ويقولون إنه لمجنون وما هو إلا ذكر للعالمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحاقة ما الحاقة وما أدراك ما الحاقة كذبت ثمود وعاد بالقارعة فأما ثمود فأهلكوا بالطاغية وأما عاد فأهلكوا بريح صرصر عاتية سخرها عليهم 7 ليال و8 أيام حسوما فترى القوم فيها صرعى كأنهم أعجاز نخل خاوية فهل ترى لهم من باقية وجاء فرعون وما قبله والمؤتفكات بالخاطية فعسوا رسول ربهم فأخذهم أخذة رابية إنا لما طغى الماء حملناكم في الجارية لنجعلها لكم تذكرة وتعيها أذن واعية فإذا نفخ في السور نفخة واحدة وحملت الأرض والجبال فدكتا دكة واحدة فيومئذ وقعت الواقعة وانشقت السماء فهي يومئذ واهية والملك على أرجائها ويحمل عرش ربك فوقهم يومئذ 8 يومئذ تعرضون لا تخفى منكم خافية فأما من أوتي كتابه بيمينه فيقول هاؤم اقرءوا كتابيه إني ظننت أني ملاق حسابيه فهو في عيشة راضية في جنة عالية قطوفها دانية كلوا واشربوا هنيئا بما أسلفتم في الأيام الخالية وأما من أوتي كتابه بشماله فيقول يا ليتني لم أوت كتابيه ولم أدر ما حسابيه يا ليتها كانت القاضية ما أغنى عني ماليه هلك عني سلطانيه خذوه فغلوه ثم الجحيم صلوه ثم في سلسلة ذرعها 70 ذراعا فاسلكوه إنه كان لا يؤمن بالله العظيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فليس له اليوم هاهنا حميم ولا طعام إلا من غسلين لا يأكله إلا الخاطئون فلا أقسم بما تبصرون وما لا تبصرون إنه لقول رسول كريم وما هو بقول شاعر قليلا ما تؤمنون ولا بقول كاهن قليلا ما تذكرون تنزيل من رب العالمين ولو تقول علينا بعض الأقاويل لأخذنا منه باليمين ثم لقطعنا منه الوتين فما منكم من أحد عنه حاجزين وإنه لتذكرة للمتقين وإنا لنعلم أن منكم مكذبين وإنه لحسرة على الكافرين وإنه لحق اليقين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سأل سائل بعذاب واقع للكافرين ليس له دافع من الله ذي المعارج تعرج الملائكة والروح إليه في يوم كان مقداره 50,000 سنة فاصبر صبرا جميلا إنهم يرونه بعيدا ونراه قريبا يوم تكون السماء كالمهل وتكون الجبال كالعهن ولا يسأل حميم حميما يبصرونهم يود المجرم لو يفتدي من عذاب يومئذ ببنيه وصاحبته وأخيه وفصيلته التي تؤويه ومن في الأرض جميعا ثم ينجيه كلا إنها لظى نزاعة للشوى تدعو من أدبر وتولى وجمع فأوعى إن الإنسان خلق هلوعا إن الإنسان خلق هلوعا إذا مسه الشر جزوعا وإذا مسه الخير منوعا إلا المصلين الذين هم على صلاتهم دائمون والذين في أموالهم حق معلوم للسائل والمحروم والذين يصدقون بيوم الدين والذين هم من عذاب ربهم مشفقون إن عذاب ربهم غير مأمون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم بشهاداتهم قائمون والذين هم على صلاتهم يحافظون أولئك في جنات مكرمون فما للذين كفروا قبلك مهطعين عن اليمين وعن الشمال عزين أيطمع كل امرئ منهم أن يدخل جنة نعيم كلا إنا خلقناهم مما يعلمون فلا أقسم برب المشارق والمغارب إنا لقادرون على أن نبدل خيرا منهم وما نحن بمسبوقين فذرهم يخوضوا ويلعبوا حتى يلاقوا يومهم الذي يوعدون يوم يخرجون من الأجداث سراعا كأنهم إلى نصب يوفضون خاشعة أبصارهم ترهقهم ذلة ذلك اليوم الذي كانوا يوعدون بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه أن أنذر قومك من قبل أن يأتيهم عذاب أليم قال يا قوم إني لكم نذير مبين أن اعبدوا الله واتقوه وأطيعون يغفر لكم من ذنوبكم ويؤخركم إلى أجل مسمى إن أجل الله إذا جاء لا يؤخر لو كنتم تعلمون قال رب إني دعوت قومي ليلا ونهارا فلم يزدهم دعائي إلا فرارا وإني كلما دعوتهم لتغفر لهم جعلوا أصابعهم في آذانهم واستغشوا ثيابهم وأصروا واستكبروا استكبارا ثم إني دعوتهم جهارا ثم إني أعلنت لهم أسررت لهم إسرارا فقلت استغفروا ربكم إنه كان غفارا يرسل السماء عليكم مضرارا ويمددكم بأموال وبنين ويجعل لكم جنات ويجعل لكم أنهارا ما لكم لا ترجون لله وقارا وقد خلقكم أطوارا ألم تروا كيف خلق الله سبع سماوات طباقا وجعل القمر فيهن نورا وجعل الشمس سراجا والله أنبتكم من الأرض نباتا ثم يعيدكم فيها ويخرجكم إخراجا والله جعل لكم الأرض بساطا لتسلكوا منها سبلا فجاجا قال نوح رب إنهم عصوني واتبعوا من لم يزده ماله وولده إلا خسارا ومكروا مكرا كبارا وقالوا لا تذرن آلهتكم ولا تذرن ودا ولا سواعا ولا يغوث ويعوق ونسرا وقد أضلوا كثيرا ولا تزد الظالمين إلا ضلالا مما خطيئاتهم أغرقوا فأدخلوا نارا فلم يجدوا لهم من دون الله أنصارا وقال نوح رب لا تذر على الأرض من الكافرين ديارا إنك إن تذرهم يضلوا عبادك ولا يلدوا إلا فاجرا كفارا رب اغفر لي ولوالدي ولمن دخل بيتي مؤمنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات ولا تزد الظالمين إلا تبارا صدق الله العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم أما بعد. We're almost near the end, so alhamdulillah, we finished the recitation of the first half of the 29th juz. For everyone who's able to, please do, inshallah, try to read the second half, and if you can, even try to get ahead to do a khatam, right? We don't know necessarily how many days will be the end of Ramadan, and with tonight being the 29th night, use that to your advantage, inshallah. And so the 29th juz, there's so many stories that this goes into, right? We can spend an entire day talking about Surah Al-Mulk, the benefits of Surah Al-Mulk, the fact that the Prophet ﷺ, this was one of the stories, one of the surahs that he would recite every single night without fail, because Surah Al-Mulk becomes a companion for you and an intercessor for you in the grave, right? From the punishment. And this is one habit that we should all try to develop to the best of our ability, because it's a very easy one to pick up. And Surah Al-Mulk is 2 pages, 2.5 pages long. If we can, to try to memorize it, to commit it to memory. But this is something that takes a few minutes to do, and the benefits are exponential. They're too many to list, right? And that even if we were to just develop this habit and not see any benefit in this dunya, we wouldn't know until we pass away. And so what we want to focus on for today is just a short story. I want to give people time to be able to use tonight to dedicate to ibadah. And so with Surah Qalam, right? Noon wal qalami wa ma yasturun. And we talked about the huruf al-muqatta'a. Dr. Moya talked about it as well, that we may never know what it means. But a lot of times that when you have these ayat, they're followed by a description of the Quran or something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is drawing attention to. And we know the weight, the absolute magnitude of the weight that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds on knowledge, right? That it's a fard ayn on every single person to continue to seek and to continue to seek and to continue to seek. And there's no limit. There's no end to our ability to learn, right? If we were to exhaust every resource available, exhaust the entirety of our lives studying, we wouldn't even scratch the surface, right? And in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swears by the pen, وَالْقَلَمِ وَمَا يَسْطُرُونَ. And really the highlight for this surah in particular is the story that the Mufassirun elaborate on of it's actually a tale that was well known to the people of Makkah at the time when it was revealed. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He begins and He says, Noon wal qalami wa ma yasturun, ma anta bi ni'mati rabbika bi majnun. That by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's swearing by, He's saying by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are not a madman. Ma anta bi ni'mati rabbika bi majnun. Because as we talked about, people used to claim that the Prophet ﷺ was mad and he was making all of this up on his own. That he had no basis for what he was saying. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rushing to his defense in these ayat. Right? And what does He continue? He says, Ma anta bi ni'mati rabbika bi majnun wa inna laka la ajrun ghayra mamnun wa innaka la'ala khuluqin azim. Right? Again, out of every single thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could highlight about the beauty of our beloved Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what does He choose to say? Right? He doesn't just say you are the messenger that was revealed with the noblest of books, with the most miraculous of miracles, but He says something far more miraculous. He says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, that you are and have been sent as the perfection, the most exemplary of manners, right? خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, the most beautiful of manners. Right? That is the example. That is the epitome of who our Prophet ﷺ was and the essence of our deen. Right? We know that the Prophet ﷺ tells us that, in different hadith, some about marriage, some about, just character of people in general. But when told when the Sahaba asked him, how do you know about the essence of somebody's deen, right? Whether somebody's deen is manifested in their hearts. And the Prophet ﷺ says, look at their character. Look at their manners. Right? Their outward actions are a testification to what their heart contains. And so the Prophet ﷺ was the most exemplary of khuluq. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. And then he continues, right? And كَانَ ذَا مَالِ, in a later ayah, and كَانَ ذَا مَالِ وَبَنِينَ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to criticize the people who rejected the Prophet ﷺ. And He says, and كَانَ ذَا مَالِ وَبَنِينَ, that I gave them malu, wealth, وَبَنِينَ, and children, right? Things that people don't recognize, number one, are blessings and things that they didn't just earn with their own hands, right? We're going to be accountable for how we raised our children, right? We're going to be accountable for what we did with our wealth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that despite the fact that I gave them wealth and money and children, right? Are they rejecting this message despite the fact that we are the reason that they have these things? Right? And kana dha mali wa banin. And then again, I'm just going piece by piece at different ayats. But hamazim masha'yu wa banin, right? that all of these characteristics of the people who reject the message, these are the characteristics of evil, right? Then he talks about people who are stingy with their wealth, right? People who don't have that balance, and they're not generous in their giving, but when in their spending, they're excessive in their spending on themselves, right? Not on others, but only on themselves. That they are people who prevent good, right, from happening. Sometimes this is so difficult for people to comprehend. It's not even about doing good, but there are people who prevent good from happening, right? And these are the people who are rejecting the message. The Mufassirun say that this specific ayat that was revealed is in reference to Walid ibn Mughira, who was, a person at that time of the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he then elaborates on these negative characteristics. And what does he do? He gives us a story of people that made these mistakes, right? People who made these mistakes and what the result was. And this was a story that the people in Makkah were familiar with at the time. That was the beauty in it, right? The Quran isn't just a book in which it was narrating stories after stories where people were already claiming that they were tall tales. People were already claiming that they were made up. And so what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? He gives them a story that they're already familiar with, right? And he tells us, this is actually, the Mufassirun say that this is the first real story in the Quran that was revealed. Right? And what is that story? إِنَّا بَلَوْنَاهُمْ كَمَا بَلَوْنَا أَصْحَابَ الْجَنَّةِ إِذْ أَقْسَمُوا لَيَصْرِمُنَّهَا مُصْبِحِينَ. That we are testing these people the same way we tested the people of the garden. And the people of the garden was, there was a story that was known to the Quraysh at that time, right? There were these people that were known to this family, this very wealthy family, who is known to have this elaborate garden on the outskirts of the city of, I believe it was Sana'a in Yemen, right, at the time. And it was the largest garden in the city. It bore all kinds of fruit. And it was actually known because the person who had owned it, right, that, remember, this is before the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And so there were Jews that were pious, right? They were people that had taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They believed in what was the true message at that time. Right? These were people who had faith. And so the person who owned this garden, he was a righteous Jew. And there were many Jews in Yemen at that time. And because he was righteous and because he was a rich person with this large garden that he actually had a section in the garden that was only for the poor people. Right, the poor people in the city, that if they ever needed food, if they ever needed anything, that no questions asked, didn't matter what background that they came from, it didn't matter, what they may have had to have eaten for that day. He said, this part of the garden is my sadaqah, right? This is something that is for the people because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given me so much, right? And this was his sacrifice or his sacrifice or his donation to the community, that they could just come and take whatever that they wanted. And so it was known that everyone who was hungry in that city would go to that garden to eat. And as soon as he died, this is where the real story comes into play. As soon as this man died, the people who were to inherit his garden were his children, right? And his sons saw that their father was giving away all of this fruit, right? All of this like precious fruit that people saw value in, right? And they questioned, why is it that, in what right mindset would my father, what right mindset would my father give away all of this wealth, essentially, when we get nothing from it? And so they were questioning, what is the purpose of giving away sadaqah if we're not going to obtain any benefit from it? Right? They forget about the fact that they already have the largest garden in the city. They already have the most wealth more wealth that they know what to do with, but they wanted more. And so they became very greedy. And that morning, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِذْ أَقْسَمُوا لَيَصْرِمَنَّهَا مُصْبِحِينَ, that they all took an oath and a pact with one another. And they said that by tomorrow morning, we're going to close off that free section that was once for the poor. We're going to pick all the fruit from it, and they're not going to be able to take anything from it. And they were arrogant enough to make a promise, right? They promised and swore to each other that we'll wake up in the morning and we're going to do this thing, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَسْتَأْذُونَ. And these were people that were Muslim. That these were people who were Muslim, but they still had that stinginess in their heart. And this tells us that these weren't just stories for people who didn't believe, right? In fact, the messages that are most profound in the Quran are the ones that speak to our heart and the people who already have faith in their heart, because we recognize what a lot of our deficiencies are, right? We may claim to be people of taqwa, we may claim to be people of generosity, but then when we're tested with a difficulty, that's the exact moment in which we choose to withhold, right? Or we may be given more and more and more, and this is why a lot of times wealth is a trial, right? It's a tribulation. It's a dua that the Prophet ﷺ also made for protection from excessive wealth, but also from poverty, right? There are trials in having excessive wealth. And so, there are a lot of different meanings for what then we won't necessarily go into them. But essentially what happened was that these people, they went to sleep thinking that all of the fruit the next morning was going to be for them, that they were going to pick it and they were going to keep the entirety for themselves. And while they were sleeping, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran that He sends a messenger, right? But who or what that messenger was, I don't believe it's specified. And some of the Mufassirun, they say that the messenger, quote unquote, was metaphorically, it was a disease, right? And some people say it was a thunderstorm. Some people say it were other things, but what happened was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the same night that they go to sleep, promising that they're going to wake up the next morning, He wipes out the entirety of their garden. Right? And when they wake up the next morning, right, فَأَصْبَحَتْ كَالصَّرِيمِ, that they make their way to the garden thinking that they're excited, right? The Quran actually says that they're looking forward to doing this dhulm, right? This atrocious act against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, almost, right? Of stinginess and taking away from the poor, that they wake up excited to do it. And when they go on their way and they arrive, and it's characterized as if it were a burnt crop, that everything was just burnt to the ground. Right? وَغَدَوْا عَلَى حَرْدٍ قَادِرِينَ. And when they see this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they were angry and they were stingy. So the first thing that actually enters their heart isn't remorse. It's actually anger and stinginess, that what happened? Right? We had the largest garden in the city. Who did this? Why is it gone? Right? And despite the fact that they had everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling out their stinginess. That He had already given them everything and they wanted more. And what they actually say is very deep, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using their own words against them. They say, that when they get there, they say, I believe it's, inna ladallun, right? That we've gotten lost. They come to this garden and they think that they're not even in the right place. They say, we're truly people who have gotten lost. Right? We've missed the garden. We have to go back and find it again. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, truly you are people who are lost. Right? He uses the same words that they said, وَإِنَّا لَضَالُّونَ, that truly you are people who are lost because you had everything, yet you wanted more, so you've lost everything. Right? بَلْ نَحْنُ مَحْرُومُونَ, that once they finally realize that they're actually in the right place and they see that this truly is in fact their garden, that's when they realize their mistake, right? And they say, "Bal nahnu mahrumun," that truly we are the people that deprived ourselves because of our greediness. That we had the best garden and now we have nothing. But so the beauty is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using them as an example, and then He continues and He shows the extent of his mercy, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he recognizes the good that these people have within themselves, that they turn back to him. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he did not destroy them, right? We know other examples of Qarun, right? Somebody who was stingy and arrogant, but he did not turn back, right? He ended up getting angry and blaming, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did he do? He caused him to die. He not only took away his wealth, but he took away his life. And so, when what happens is then they turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they say that if we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and recognize our mistake, then perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us something even better than what we lost. Right? This is something that's very beautiful, because it's recognizing that even people who become people who go astray, right? Even people who make mistakes, that when they have that moment of recognition, there's still a lot of beauty in the fact that they can become people of sincere and pure hearts. And so they say, we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, maybe he'll give us a better garden out of our repentance, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in fact does give them a bigger and a better garden, and only because they repented. And so just a side note, but like it's very interesting when we read also just the language that's used in the Quran. But there's a beauty in the fact that ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna ladallun," that there are people who actually testified against themselves. And it's a reminder to ourselves that how many times do we say or do something potentially that we don't even recognize, but that is going to be a testament against us on Yawm al-Qiyamah, right? And to be very careful about the actions that we say and the actions that we do. And I remember when we were learning this story with one of our teachers, just a side joke for the kids, but I remember he was, my teacher was telling me that one time he was reciting this Surah in Tarawih, and he gets to Inna ladallun, but the person behind him is so tired that he doesn't recognize that he's reciting Surah Qalam, and he says Amun, right? Instead of Waladdallin and Amin, he says Amun. And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this story, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst people who look at the qasas in the Quran and be able to take heed from them, and to be able to reflect on them and embody the meanings in which he hopes to convey in them. Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam. Tabarakta ya dhul jalali wal ikram. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallam. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhab an-nar wa adkhilna al-jannata ma'al abrar ya aziz ya ghaffar. Allahumma innaka afuwun kareemun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna ya kareem. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. اللهم إنا نسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. الله المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Jazakallah khair. We're almost at the end. There may be one more day. And so for the kids, the winner from yesterday is Rimsha. So congratulations to her. Inshallah, the question for today will be, what was the story of the man who had a garden, right? What was the story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about the man who has a garden in Surah Qalam, and what's the lesson to be learned from it? So inshallah, we'll announce the winner for that tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum.